Right, you guys have voted. It's the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers today. We've got 7 questions in relation to the unit. Let's show you the poll. 53% of you guys voted out of 1,000 votes for the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. It was quite all units were pretty good here, to be honest. But yeah, Lokhust Heavy Destroyers absolutely stormed the vote. I've nearly forgot the comment from the previous video, but with the illusion of editing, I can put this in now. So we've got a comment from the Void Dragon video, and this was from Tanamo77. You missed the most important question I asked before I played the Void Dragon, which is, does it look awesome? His answer was, yes it does, so I play it. I really wanted to put that in the actual video last time, but it didn't hold any value competitively, so I didn't, but it definitely deserves a spot here. So shout out to you. So we're looking at these Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. They're 50 points a man. You can get them in units of up to 1, 2 or 3, whatever you fancy there. And they do come with 2 loadouts. One is the Mythic Exterminators and the other one is the Ghost Destructors. So let's get in to the questions. Question number 1. What's the best loadout from the 2 weapon options? Now, most players tend to play with the Ghost Destructors, arguably the best anti-tank weapon that we've got within our codex, for the points cost. For 50 points for one of these shots, which, you know, it's strength 14, -4, 6 damage with lethal hits and heavy. It's pretty good, it's pretty effective. 50 points for that as well is nice. I mean, you're also getting to reroll 1s to wound with the unit's ability. That's against monsters and vehicles with this particular weapon. And yeah, as I said, it's probably one of the best anti-tanks, and we do have a limit on how many anti-tank weapons we've got in the codex. Some of the other ones aren't that great, or they're just too expensive. We'll probably talk about them later on in this video. Now, some people do like the Exterminators. I quite like the Exterminators, but I would say the Destructors are better. Those Exterminators, you get a lot of shots, you get a lot of firepower. Your strength 6 -1 damage though, they tear through most units just from the sheer amount of shots. Now, a 3-man unit within rapid fire range of 36 shots, and providing that you didn't move, you're firing with the heavy keyword, you're going to have 6 sustained hits out of that volley. You will also get 6 ones, so that will actually make 36 hits. So it almost feels like a torrent in that sense, because you're almost automatically hitting on average, although it isn't done in that way. Strength 6 against most infantry, you're wounded on 3s, maybe even 2s, and you again get to reroll 1s against non-monster vehicles, which is actually their kind of target. However, we do have quite a solid amount of anti-infantry weapons within the codex, so I would definitely favour the Destructors more than the Exterminators, but both are just as good as both are just good. Next question, how do I get the best out of them? This was actually a question from Stacy Rob 01, and it was a question saying, do you rate the Lokhust Lord with the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers using the Exterminators, or better to stick with the individual models using the Ghost Destructors as other units perform that role, i.e. Immortals, which you kind of just mentioned in the previous question. But how do you get the best out of them? With the Exterminators, you would definitely put a Lokhust Lord in a 3-man unit. 100%, because now you're getting sustained hits on a 5+ with those weapons rather than a 6+. So instead of getting 36 hits on average, you're now getting 42 hits on average with a Lokhust Lord within the unit. So definitely worth it there. You've also got the added enhancement options, depending on your detachment of course. And you get a resurrection orb as well, which is always handy. Now when you're taking the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers, I would advise to not bother with the Lokhust Lord. You've got lethal hits, and even if you don't roll a lethal hit and you're going to roll to wound, you are strength 14, you probably need 2s or 3s anyway. It's just not worth having an 80-point Lokhust Lord. In fact, what I would do, which kind of brings me on to the next question, so we'll say it now, best unit size. And this comes from Carlos Hernando 6351, another 4-digit pin code there. How many of them? 3 in a unit or 3 single units? If I'm playing Lokhust Heavy Destroyers with the Ghost Destructors, I would separate them. I mean, there is a downside to separating them, which is to do with reanimation protocols. If you lose your one model, there's absolutely no way of reanimating it back. Whereas if he's within a unit of 3 and you lost a model, you have a chance of reanimating it back. So you do lose reanimation in a sense, but there's lots of advantages. You can separate them in different areas of your deployment map, in your deployment zone, so therefore you can zone out your opponent's deep strikes and strategic reserves. You also can get 3 complete different firing lanes from 3 different areas of your deployment zone again. Also, you don't suffer any damage overspill. For example, if you've got a 3-man unit and let's say your opponent puts 3 wounds on your unit and each one is 2 damage. Now, if you've got a unit of 3, the first 2 wounds, which is 4 damage, would kill one model, and then the final wound, which is another 2 damage, will go on to a second model. Now, if you're in individual units, all 3 of those wound rolls would just go onto the one model because they've not split fire. So you're kind of forcing your opponent to either split fire, which is sometimes quite a hard decision, or they're going to overspill on their damage. Or, in some cases, they're going to underperform and not kill the unit outright. So there are advantages to splitting the unit into 3. Now, that's with the Ghost Destructors. With the Exterminators, I would always keep them together. You don't need to separate them unless you've got 50 points spare and you just threw one in, but you may as well put a Destructor in at that point. If you're taking Exterminators, put them together, put a Locust Lord in the unit, make use of the Resurrection Orb, Reanimation Protocols, and all the abilities, because the ability from the Locust Lord is going to work on the unit, not one model. It's not going to be worth it having it with one model. Now, in fact, going back to the Ghost Destructors a moment, because I missed something out here. If you are taking 3 individual units, that means you cannot take any more Locust Heavy Destroyers, because that's 3 data cards done for Locust Heavy Destroyers. So you got to bear that in mind as well. If you planned on taking a few more units, you can't do so because you've taken all 3 spots or slots with your Locust Heavies. Let's clear that up. Right, next question. The best attachment for Locust Heavy Destroyers. We've got a few options. I mean, it depends on the weapon here. So we're going to have to go through this individually. If you're taking the Exterminator weapon with the Locust Lord, this is going to work fantastically in the Awakened Dynasty, because you're going to get that +1 to the hit roll. Now, I know what you guys are saying.
Well, you're hitting on 2s anyway with heavy.
Right, you are. But now you can move quite freely with your 8-inch movement and still be hitting on 2s, which makes all the difference for your rapid fire, or just getting line of sight, getting the right firing lanes, and so on. But you want to ideally get rapid fire, so you need to get within 18-inch range to do so. Also, in that detachment, you've got an enhancement such as the Veil of Darkness, so you're going to pop in straight into rapid fire range with your weapons, which, yeah, that's going to delete a unit if you wanted to. Now, sticking with this attachment for a moment, we mentioned earlier you're going to get 42 hits on average with the Locust Lord with sustained hits on a 5+. But if you also use the Protocol of Conquering Tyrant, then you get to re-roll your hit rolls of roll 1. You do actually get to re-roll all your hit rolls, so if there was a negative modifier, you get to re-roll everything. But let's just presume you're hitting on 2s, re-rolling 1s. Instead of getting 42 hits on average, it's now 49 hits on average. That's huge. That's huge. 49 hits on average. We'll talk about some figures in a moment, but that's massive. Now, sticking with this detachment, we're probably going to go through quite a few of these stratagems in this detachment because I think it is the best one. There's another nasty trick with the Vengeful Stars stratagem, the Protocol of Vengeful Stars. Be within 6 inches of a friendly unit that just got destroyed. And guess what? You can, for 2 CP, fire everything. As long as the Locust Lord's in that unit, you fire everything as if it was your shooting phase. You still get to reroll your 1s to wound, because if you look closely at their ability, they get to do it any time they attack. It isn't just limited to your shooting phase, it's any attack that they make, you get to reroll 1s to wound. So that will count even when you're using the Protocol of Vengeful Stars in your opponent's shooting phase. You've also got the Undying Legion stratagem as well. Again, best served on a 3-man unit rather than individual Ghost Destructor units. So you lose a single model, you get to activate Reanimation Protocols, and it's on a +1 as well. So D3 +1 because the Locust Lord's in the unit. Don't forget you've got the Resurrection Orb as well, so that synergy works pretty well. Now you can also use another detachment, which is the Hypocrite Legion, which is my preferred go-to. You've got the Arise and Tyrant enhancement to get to reroll all your hit rolls. You've got the Osteoclay Fulcrum to have deep strike, so when you are hyperphasing back in, you can do it anywhere on the board, just more than 9 inches away from enemy models, so therefore you're going to get straight into rapid fire range again. You're going to be absolutely smashing out with all those hits. Now with the Ghost Destructors, they're a little bit more limited in terms of what detachment suits them. They're not going to have a character for the Awakened Dynasty. buffs and abilities, the Hypercrypt Legion isn't ideal either because they don't need to be going forward. They've got a lot of range, 40 to 48 inch of range. But fear not, they work in every single detachment. They don't need to necessarily marry up to the detachment rule. They're just good. Some would say they're an auto-include for any detachment that you play. And I'd probably agree with that. They are that good that you can even put them in the Annihilation Legion or the Canoptic Court and just stick them at the back and they're still doing just fine. What about the competition? I've got some on the screen here for you. There are some competition for the Ghost Destructors. First of all, the Doom Scythe. That's a strength 16 weapon, so the strength is better, the AP is the same. The damage is only D6 plus 1 rather than 6. So that is competition, but that's 230 points and it's an aircraft, so you've got no OC. I think it's a tad expensive. I think it's a little bit too expensive for me. That's why I don't field aircrafts. In general, in the meta right now, aircrafts aren't the thing to go to. The Silent King, another expensive model, 420 points, doesn't ever do much for me. You may have seen in a recent battle report with Demon Prince Powie, he just stinks. He doesn't do a lot. The 2 Annihilation Beams are of course damage 6. They're pretty much the same stats. Strength 14, minus 4 AP and damage 6, and you're hitting on 2s. Very similar to the Ghost Destructors. And if you've got the right trike ability, you can even reroll 1s to hit and wound as well. So they are good, but 420 points good? No, not for me. The Canoptic Doomstalker, 145, that's a cheap option. And if you're playing the Canoptic Court, great, you're going to be re-rolling all your hit rolls in the Power Matrix. That's nice. Again, it's strength 14. Minus 3 AP and 3 damage, so the AP is slightly less and the damage is literally half. It's 3 rather than 6. But you're only paying 145 points and you're getting D6 plus 1 shots with Blast as well. So that's a decent option, to be honest with you. And the Doomsday are quite similar. Strength 18 though. Minus 4 is the same and damage 4 is less but decent. Again, D6 plus 1 with Blast and Heavy. 200 points though, that is, but you do get the Ghost Flares on the side. But there's a lot of competition for the Ghost Destructors. As for the Exterminator weapons, we've got tons of stuff. I mean, I always go to the Immortals, we've got the Warriors. If you want to look at the Canoptic Spiders with the Particle Blasters, we've got those. The Doomsday Arcs with the Flare Arrays. We've got loads of little guns, the Lokhust Destroyers. And that's just the range stuff. There's loads of anti-infantry within the Codex. We are quite limited with anti-tank and anti-monster, so I think that's why I'd say there's less competition for the Destructors than there is for the Exterminators. Where should the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers go in game? Now, Exterminator wise, I think they just simply need to get within 18-inch range of the target that they want to kill. So you've got to move. You might lose heavy for a turn, but you've got to move, you've got to get within 18. Yes, you can stay 36 inches away and keep your heavy, so you're hitting on 2s. But what's the point? If you just move a little bit, okay, you're hitting on 3s, but you've got twice as many shots. So you may as well make that movement, get 18 inches away and fire. I mean, there's ways of doing this though. Like you can either stay back and have a line of sight on no man's land objectives to cover it. So if anything gets on it, let's say some bloodletters take over a no man's land objective or a load of Orc boys, then you're going to be like, right, I'm guarding that from afar. Bang, 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 bang. You're now not there. So that's if you're playing against melee factions. You don't want to go forward because you're going to get rushed. You want to stay back and defend it from afar. If you're going up against the shooty factions, the Taus, the Astra Militariums, you may as well go forward. They're going to be able to shoot you from far anyway with the distance that they have. You may as well go forward, put the OC on the no man's land objective and get within rapid fire range of those enemy units that are in their home deployment zone so that you get rapid fire on them. As for the Ghost Destructors, they've got 48 inch of range. Keep them back, as far back as you possibly can. If you want to tag your home objective, then yeah, that's fine. That's okay. Sometimes it does magnify them as a target though, because your opponent may be gunning for that objective, your home objective. So if you've got that unit there, they're going to be like, right, not only am I going to be taking the home objective, but I'm also going to be eliminating their best anti-tank weaponry. So sometimes it's best to not put them on the home objective for that very reason. They don't want to do 2 birds with 1 stone with that. But they don't need to wander out of the DZ. They've got 48 inch range. There's absolutely no need for it. Then on to the final question. Locust Heavy Destroyers or Standard Locust Destroyers? This one's a big question. I've saved it till last. Now, when we talk about this question, we're mainly referring to the Exterminators here. We're not talking about the Ghost Destructors because they don't really compare with Locust Destroyers. So I'm going to show you on the screen a few little maths that I've done already. I'm not going to go through all the hard maths, but what I've done with this maths is I've added a Locust Lord to both units because they can be led by a Locust Lord, both these units here. It's worth noting that the Locust Destroyers are 30 points more expensive than 3 Locust Heavy Destroyers because you need to have 6 Locust Destroyers to maximise the unit. Also, I've done the average at best. Let me explain that. So I've used the rapid fire, I've used the heavy keyword, I've used the rerolls with the Locust Destroyers. So yeah, everything is turned on as if it was your best scenario, but then I averaged it out. Both units have got critical hits on a 5+ with the Locust Lord. And I've rounded up these figures with no decimal places. I've got 7 specific units here, all different types of toughness groups. And let's go through them. So Termagants, which are toughness 3. Those Locust Heavies are killing 34 of them. Whereas the Locust Destroyers are only killing 13. It's probably worth mentioning actually, the Locust Destroyers are strength 5 minus 2 AP, 2 damage. So you only get 3 attacks per model. Even though there's 6 of them, it's 3 attacks per model. You're going to have less attacks, so of course you're going to have less kills. So 34 to 13, so I've highlighted one in green, one in red to show which one is best. Deep breath, I'm going too fast. Intercessors, which are toughness 4, the Locust Destroyers get 9, and the heavy variants only get 8. Because they're of course 2 wound models, so every time the Locust Destroyers get through, they just kill it, whereas the Locust Heavies need to get 2 wounds through to kill a model. Raveners are toughness 5, we go back towards the Heavies, killing 9 versus 6 for the Locust Destroyers. I mean, this is very specific to units because they're only toughness 5, those guys. They're only toughness 5, but they're only got a 5+ armor save. So they're not the best with the armor save, but it's something that's toughness 5 from Tyranids. I've used Marines and Tyranids if you haven't worked it out yet. Eradicators, which are toughness 6, 3 wounds apiece. You kill 4 with the Heavies and 3 with the normal ones. And then from here on, the Locust Destroyers pretty much win. Carnifex, toughness 9. Yes, they're wounded on 5s. Well, they're both wounded on 5s at this point. But the Locust Destroyers literally kill the model, whereas the Locust Heavies only do 5 damage. Vindicators are toughness 11. So the Heavies are wounded on 5s. The standard ones are wounded on 6s. But they still get 9 damage. And then the Tyrannofex, toughness 12, both units here are going to be wounded on 6s at this point. 2 damage for the Locust Heavies and 9 damage for the Destroyers. So yeah, that was with all the rerolls that they get, and obviously the Locust Heavies get to reroll 1s to wound against non-monsters and non-vehicles. So the Carnifex, the Vindicator and the Tyrannofex, they didn't get their rerolls, and you can see that it's gone downhill from that point. So I kind of think the Locust Destroyers are superior for this. I mean, okay, against the toughness 3 stuff, they weren't as good, but you've got plenty of other units, Immortals as an example again. When you're going up against those Raveners, they were only 3 models shy. Not a massive amount, but again, you've got anti-infantry elsewhere. Eradicators, they were only 1 model shy, but everything else, they were better. They were better, especially the big stuff. So I would say that the Locust Destroyers are better than the Locust Heavies with the Exterminators, not necessarily the Ghost Destructors, but that doesn't make the Exterminators a bad unit. It just makes them a different unit. So guys, yeah, I am definitely going on vacation now. I did manage to cram one more video in, but there will be a poll in a week's time, which I probably said in the last video, and then I did another poll. Hey, never mind. But thank you all for getting involved, and I will see you in the next one.